You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
And what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network, live on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Excited to be coming at you talking USC Trojans football here, finally on a somewhat sunny day, at least not rainy day in LA. But joined as always by the Madman, Mr. Jamal. Madney, what's up, brother? How we doing? How's the week going?
Doing well, Rye. Great to see you, and great to talk Trojans here as we head into the weekend. It's been an interesting pro day and week for USC. The weather gods have not been too kind to the Trojans, but it's still a very compelling day, and I think excited about the direction of the future.
Yeah, they get their pro day, and it's monsoon weather in LA, and the indoor facility wasn't big enough to run the 40, so they couldn't even move it indoor. Just, when you live in LA, you don't need anything indoor. So why would you even think about that on the campus of USC? So they had to do it all outside in the mush. So we'll kind of talk about that, what went down, some measurables that came in. And also, we talked last episode, Jamal, about the game day experience with this USC football team and what can change potentially to improve that and make it more of a, whether it's a college feel or just an entertainment feel. And we kind of had some cool ideas, and then have a few more, or at least one more we can debate and talk about. And we have some polls up on Twitter and the website for all of you listeners to get into. So show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Gets you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. You still got a little bit of March Madness left to bet on, and you got the playoffs for NBA and NHL and draft season right around the corner. So plenty to get in the action, and do it all at betonline.ag. Promo code BELIEVE. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So USC Trojans, our Trojans, fight on pro day. Well, I just start with this, Jamal. The main, I don't want to take any disrespect because they're all, great players that are hopefully all going to have careers in the NFL. But the two hot names in this draft class are Jordan Addison and Tuipulotu, obviously, neither of which did a whole lot. Didn't run the 40 time, either of them. Jordan Addison did do a shuttle and a 3-cone. Tuli basically got measured, got his height and weight, and that was about all he did. So let me ask you that first on Tuli, who we both have talked about how good of a player is. We talked about him before many times, even going into this draft, how he's kind of slimmed down and comes in at the edge or whatnot. But is that concerning at all for you? Or is it more of a, hey, look at my tape, I don't need to do anything in these rainy conditions to potentially hurt my stock because nothing's going to help it?
No, Ryan, I think you said it best here at the end. And I think it was a very strategic decision. And I think it comes down to who is part of your team. Who's the brain trust in terms of your agent, the relationship that you have with kind of the USC scout department and the relationships with the NFL to say, where are we projected to go in this draft and how tight is that interval? Because some guys are, hey, you could be as high as 4th round, as late as undrafted. That's not really telling me anything. But if you have a tight sort of interval there where you say, look, you're going to be as high as mid-second or as low as sort of late 3rd, and that's a very tight interval, you kind of know where you're going, and then it makes you a little bit more conservative at the end of this process leading up to the draft. And so I think for Addison as well as for Tuipulotu, I think that they thought, given the conditions, given the way the field was sort of set up, the sudden change, and given how tight potentially their interval was, I think we all sort of recognize Addison as a potential first-round pick. He would go no lower than mid-second, and I think Tuipulotu is probably somewhere in that mid-3rd to early 5th kind of range, in that sort of class and a half, if you will. When you kind of know you're sort of locked in there, going out there and running drills in wet conditions on a soggy field where you can't really plant your feet, you can't really do too much, and you're going to get some poor measurables is only going to hurt you. So it's only downside. There's very little upside because you're not going to be able to generate great numbers in those conditions. So at best, what you can do is just further solidify that interval. But the downside is, let's say you slip, you fall, something happens there. Now all of a sudden you have this sort of stain of a measurable against your name And so I think it was a very strategic choice, and I think it was the right choice for them. If you notice, Ryan, the guys who kind of went and did the 40-yard, the guys who did more of the drills were guys that truthfully aren't really thought of potentially as guys that are going to get drafted for the most part. So for them, there was no downside. It's, well, if we don't do this, we're still going to be undrafted. If we show that we can do some great things in some difficult conditions, it's only going to be upside and there's no downside. So you're always kind of making that upside downside trade. And for the Addisons and the Tuipulotus of the world, that equation is very different from the rest of the guys that were part of the pro day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's worst case scenario. You see a guy like Andrew Voorhees who unfortunately shreds his ACL in perfect conditions at the combine, on turf, on a nice field. And you don't want to be running on sloppy grass and, God forbid, injure yourself. I mean, your times are going to hurt anyway, regardless. No one's going to run a faster time in the conditions they were in. So no matter what, your times are going to hurt. But then if you get injured, like, what a waste. So yeah, I think it's absolutely a strategic play, and they know, their value, their worth, and, it was smart of them not to do it. Two shocking notes, about shocking notes, but kind of cool notes. And then we can move on to other talk, because, pro day is a pro day. And especially when there's no quarterback, it's kind of not as exciting to talk about. But one really impressive thing, Jamal, was first, we're talking about these 40 times and how you're going to do nothing but hurt your times or what on this in this rain and weather. Terrell Bynum, receiver, transferred over. He ran the 40, ran a 4.5 in this horrible conditions. I think that's pretty quick for having running basically in the pool, if you will. So I thought Terrell Bynum, who obviously wasn't at the combine and hasn't been able to, even this season didn't get to maybe showcase his skill set quite as much as he wanted to, just because of how vaunted the wide receiver room was. We saw flashes of it, and we saw flashes of the talent of him transferring over. But yeah, I was impressed that he was able to get that time in with those conditions. What were your thoughts on Bynum?
I totally agree, Ryan. I thought that Bynum really showed a tremendous amount of bursts. 4 or 5 in these conditions. And again, in that case, Bynum's not a guy we think of when we think of a guy who's going to get drafted. So when you look at, 40, 4.5 40, 35-inch vert, in these conditions and under this situation, there's some measurables there. Does someone maybe late day 3 kind of take a chance on him, or does he catch the eye of a team and really gets sort of a targeted invite as a free agent? So for him, again, I think it really helped to sort of go out there, and he really showed out. I'll be honest with you, Ryan, and to your point earlier, it is just a pro day. It's non-quarterback pro day. It's kind of prospects that are sort of end of draft type of prospects. So you got to have to sort of filter that as context. But having said all of that, I think the guy that really hurt himself, truthfully, was Travis Dye. When you sort of look at the measurables there, Ryan, 4.75 40, only a 27-inch vertical. The measurables really were not his friend. And when you sort of add to that the tread that he's had on his tires the last several years in college, obviously he was such a great college player. You and I talked about it for most of the year. Arguably the most valuable player on the team outside of Caleb Williams for the majority of that season, very much kind of in that Marshall Faulk type of role for the USC offense. But when you talk about the tough yards and the number of touches he's had in college, and then you factor in these measurables, hard for me to see a path where Travis Dye gets drafted. Even if you discount the field, how much do you discount the 40 time by? Even if you discount it by 1/10 of a second, even if you discount it by 0.15 seconds, that still leaves him in a 4.6. Even if you discount the vert by 1 or 2 inches, it's still only 28 or 29 inches. So I think that Dye was one of those guys who was, I think, on the outside looking in. And I think given his performance, I think he's staying on the outside when it comes to being drafted. Yeah,
I totally hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily disagree, but I'll play the devil's advocate of it. And the way I would see it from that perspective is, here's a guy that had a season-ending injury towards the end of the season. I can't remember what week it was, but, it was in the final 3 or 4 weeks of the season. At the time, some were questioning, is it career ending? I mean, I don't think a lot of people thought that, but that was definitely floating around. And obviously it ended the season. Obviously it ended badly for USC, not being able to have him on the field and whatnot. So for me, I would see that as, okay, here's a guy that had that injury, not just 5 months ago, and is here at Pro Day saying he's 100%, going through all these drills and measurables and running. And you could play the devil's advocate and say, well, maybe he's not fully healthy if these are the times he's giving. But I think the fact that he was out there showing that, because you look at a guy just today, or just Thursday, at Utah's Pro Day, Dalton Kincaid did not do any of the drills. And we saw him at the combine and talked to him, and he said he was close to 100%, but he just didn't want to push anything yet. And so I have no worries about a guy like Dalton Kincaid, but I mean, there are scouts and teams out there that will see that, him not participating, and saying, are there still injuries concerns? Are we worth it? Now, obviously, he's a potential first-round pick. Travis Dye, even with great times, would not be that. But a guy that the teams can now say, okay, he's fully healthy. Times aren't great, but look at the field. We can see what he did on the field as long as he's good to go. And he proved that in, late March. So come draft time, we feel fully confident he's even more healthy and ready to go. So times aren't great. Totally agree with you, but I could see it helping his, maybe not necessarily his stock, but helping relieve some scouts out there that were high on him, say last October, now being like, okay, I think he'll be back to form come time training camp if we give him a flyer in that, 7th round or as a walk-on. So who knows? But that's the way I would look at it, maybe.
Yeah, no, Ryan, I think it makes sense. I think you have to really want to believe that his skill set is very unique to the system that you're running, because I think there's a pretty far path there to go from 4.75 to any sort of a 4.55 type of number that would even be sort of serviceable as a back in the NFL. And so to me, yes, I hear your point of, hey, now we have a path. We didn't even know, arguably a couple of months ago, whether he would even be in a position to threaten an NFL roster given the severity of that injury. Now he's at least out there. He's running. He's doing his thing. So there's a path there. But the question for me now becomes, is that path just too unattainable? Like, is the road just too long, given these numbers? So that would be sort of my concern. But again, I think it's a similar situation where he really didn't have much to lose. So he kind of went out there and said, hey, let's see if lightning can strike here and I can get some good numbers. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And I think you probably leave it as, if you weren't high on Travis Dye, there's nothing that he did to make you get high on him. And I think if you were high on Travis Dye, you can sort of rationalize, hey, there's a path there. So I think in that sense, he left as how he came, versus maybe someone like Bynum, hey, maybe raised some eyebrows and said, hey, do we give this guy a shot as a free agent with an invite?
Yeah, I'm just impressed. Dye came in at 210. I mean, we've stood by. I've stood next to him many times. He plays so small, and I'm like, 210. You do not look like you're a solid 60 pounds heavier than me. And obviously, that's all muscle and whatnot. So even with the injury, at least has been staying active, staying fit in the weight room. So obviously, we both love Travis Dye. So hope the best for him, and a SoCal kid through and through, and hopefully he can continue the journey. So. Any other pro day thoughts, or should we move on? Tuli comes in at 268, so around that same weight at the combine. Obviously we know that's a little thin, but any other notes you think, or are we good here?
I was a little bit surprised that Blackmon didn't do any more, but I think again he was sort of protecting himself a little bit. He got measured and that was about it. So interesting there. I think if I was Blackmon, that maybe is a signal that he's sort of getting a sense of where he's going to end up in this draft. And again, that interval is pretty tight. And so there's really no reason to sort of risk it. So this was, I think, the irony here, Ryan, is this was probably in reality one of the most unmemorable USC Pro Days kind of in the recent years. And next year is probably going to be the most memorable when you've got Caleb Williams there. Caleb Williams' Pro Day might have a greater attendance than the capacity of some Pac-12 stadiums. I mean, that might be, that might be 40,000 people at Caleb Williams' Pro Day next year. So I think if the theme of the day is the calm before the storm, in 2024.
Yeah, it's going to be a circus most likely, and I wouldn't shock me to fall if it comes out and he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to throw my pro day. I'll be good." Just disappoint everybody. But and the last theme that was noticeable was just the guys that were at the combine were the ones that really didn't do much. Addison, Blackmon, Tuipulotu, and then obviously Voorhees for other reasons. But so all right. Well, let's move on there. Best of luck to those guys. I still think Addison will be a first round pick. Boy, I'm sure we'll talk more about it. Still a month away from the actual draft. So plenty more to get into there. But we talked last episode, Jamal, about some potential what could be done to improve the game day experience at USC. And I got to think and put this tweet out today. Would love to hear people go engage with it or text Trojans to 31032 and you can answer right there. But there's such cool college traditions out there. West Virginia has Country Road that everyone gets down to. Virginia Tech has Enter the Sandman, where the whole crowd just gets wild during that song. You have Jump Around with Wisconsin is so famous. You have the Whiteout in Penn State, and USC has some very cool traditions. I mean, Traveler is obviously a historic tradition. They've done some fun, different things at the start of games, like this year specifically. At night, they do the blackout with everyone's phones. They have the video board, like hype video, and then the fire, and it's some fun stuff. But I was like, a true LA song blasting over the speakers, getting the crowd going, that's just consistent every week would be a ton of fun. So I put out this list. So this is I ask you, Jamal, and of course we're running out of time already, which is insane how fast these go. But the 4 songs I chose were Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses, Today Was a Good Day, Ice Cube, To Live and Die in LA, Tupac, Nothing But a G Thing, Dr. Dre and Snoop. Those are the 4 I get. So let me ask you this. First, out of those 4, what would you choose? And then second, would you actually choose one of those 4, or would you have a different song altogether? So that's how I'll pose it to you.
I love the question. So for me, this is going to be easier. I would say To Live and Die in LA by Tupac. I mean, that is sort of the ethos of the USC brand, and kind of that intimidating factor when they walk in, and the ultimate swag and what have you. So for me, that would be the list. And then I think I would sort of compare that and sort of have a discussion with you and the rest of the USC brain trust on potentially California Love. And then I think if it was a little bit more peppy and not so kind of maybe gangster rap, which I think is I'm a big fan of gangster rap, and I think it would be terrific. Maybe if it was a little bit more kind of poppy, if you will, would be T.I.'s Bring 'Em Out, and that would kind of be my 3. It would sort of be Tupac, California Love, Bring 'Em Out, and sort of kind of make a decision off of that. But I completely agree with you, Ryan. I think that if there was a signature moment for USC pregame that sort of channeled LA, channeled the swag, channeled the culture, and had them walk in, I think it would be really cool. Look, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here, Ryan. I love Traveler. I'm a USC alum. I don't know how much riding a white horse goes with like the USC brand. Like, you sort of, you get it, and it's historic, and Traveler is rarefied air and just an iconic symbol for USC. But if you sort of take a little bit of a step back, and if you were to sort of blank canvas this and say, what is USC? And you were just to sort of start over, I don't think you would start that conversation with riding a white horse. There's just sort of a reality there of what USC is. And so to me, and what would be even more fun with having the #1 film school in the world and the School of Cinematic Arts and having the Thornton School of Music, wouldn't it be such a fun exercise for students, for alumni, to actually have a composing competition for creating actually an original score for the football team running out of the tunnel? Wouldn't that be an incredible activity to sort of galvanize the community? And, well, let's not just pick what's already there. Maybe we create our own thing. And so that could be something very, very cool.
Yeah, that would be super cool. And I think you could even do that with an original LA song at the beginning and then do the composing of or the battle of the bands, if you will, throughout the game. Instead, like, get rid of the DJ, right? Like, we don't need to have this DJ that's just shouting nonsense. Nothing against him or whatever, but I just think that's cheesy, if you will, and takes away from the college vibe. And so I think that'd be sweet. But I think, the openings, having the whole crowd all in unison after, say we do this year and we can, after 4 years from now, it gets on the main stage of people recognizing it and like, this is a USC LA thing. I mean, that whole list, I love. California Love, I was gonna put on there. The only reason why I didn't is because it includes like some Bay stuff, and I was like, I want strictly LA. But it's a phenomenal song. Nothing But a G Thing, just that opening hook would be so like everyone just swaying. I think that'd be great. To Live and Die in LA is like so peak LA. It'd be perfect just hearing the crowd in unison. It's not as like hype, if you will, but the crowd in unison going after it would just be incredible. And then Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle. I mean, Guns N' Roses was founded at the Troubadour in LA. So if those that don't know, they are like the ultimate LA grunge band. Well, not really grunge, but if you can be grunge in LA, that was Guns N' Roses. And that just, if you think of like Enter the Sandman at Vatek with just the guitar and the crowd just getting higher and higher and higher, if you have Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle, that would, if you're going pure hype, that's the song. If you're going pure like sing along, which it sounds weird to say sing along for a rap song, it's To Live or Die in LA. If you're going like the sway, the swagger, it's Nothing But a G Thing. So I mean, any of them I think would be a winner. And I just, I think we're gonna have to talk to the board, Jamal, make this happen. We're gonna talk to Miss Folt and be like, let's get this going here.
I think so because it could use a bit of a revival. I think it's great to have the former players run out and lead them, but I think there's really an opportunity to galvanize with what the brand is of USC football and to get everyone hyped up for it. I completely agree.
Yeah. And some of these traditions, and last thing I'll say, like some of them are very, very old, but some of them, I'm trying to think, the one in South Carolina, University of South Carolina, I can't remember the song they do, but it started like 8 years ago. It's not like some like 50-year-old legendary thing. So I mean, why not now? Why not now? Why not us? Why not start now? So we'll see. Let us know what you guys think. It's up on Twitter at LFB Network if you want to vote there, or text us. Text Trojans to 31032, and you can let us know which song you would choose to hear the USC football team run out on. But as always, that's all the time we got for Trojan Huddle here on radio. We will be back after the break with some more LA football talk. If you're on podcast, Trojans fans, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more Trojans Huddle. For Jamal Madney, I'm Ryan Dyer. Talk to you all soon.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.